budgeting?
Proportional budgeting has its place, but I think it's a pitfall, it's a difficulty. How do you measure that, right? How do you keep track of that? If I say I'm spending 30, as a person, if I say I'm spending 30% of my time on project X and 70% of my time on project Y, the effort required to make sure that I'm accurate with that is probably not worth talking about. So I tend to think that at a company level and at a budget level, you shouldn't be doing that sort of split either. Now you can say, here's the total company budget,
Right.
and 20% of it is going to go to these types of products and so much percent to each of those. Fine, put numbers on that. Okay, that means 5 million, and that means 16 million, and that means whatever, and now you're done talking about proportions, right? Because I think it's very difficult to say, okay, this month or this quarter we're going to do 40% over here. Well, how do you enforce that? How do you track that? And it's possible to track that, but is it worth it? I don't think so. I think it's more important to pick the high priority items and make sure that the high priority ones are staffed, and then you're done. And if you have 3 things that fall off, well, then you can't do those 3 things because they're lower priority.
So it's essentially doing forced linear prioritization in that epic moment.
Correct. And it's kind of the concept of work and process limits, right? From a Kanban, whatever the right pronunciation is.
It's Kanban.
Is it Kanban? That sort of same concept needs to live in companies, because I've seen lots of companies who simply say yes to everything because they see dollar signs, and the reality is they're not going to get done, but they refuse to make a conscious choice of what's not going to get done. They'd rather have something fall on the floor than make the conscious choice.
But that's where the Scrum framework may help.
Correct.
Force them to make that choice. That's
correct.
That's kind of what I was saying earlier about too many things being thrown over the fence. That's
exactly.
What I was meaning.
Exactly. So you need to have this. So you need to have this epic board. You need to have some function that allows the C-level or director level to know when they've committed enough and stop committing when they're trying to go too much.
We have a new type of board, which I guess is below the epic board, which we call the storyteller board. And this is where stuff that's not ready for production, that is not well defined, but it's coming out of an epic, or maybe is even still an epic. It's basically how a group of people who are generally sort of managers and above the production team to figure out what is missing for that to become a production story, and they scrum that. So it's kind of like a separate little scrum that basically boils something down to something that produce.
It's kind of a product definition scrum, as it were.
Kind of also like a product owner scrum, I guess.
Yeah.
In a way.
That's interesting.
But it's just helpful to kind of move stuff from being something that's not useful yet to something that we can actually drop into a sprint without sucking resources from the production team themselves.
Another transition technique that I've used, like before we get to the utopian vision, was to actually print out the entire product backlog for each of the product area that you have, and then line out based on the product owner's, lower level person, in this case the manager level person, and then have all the senior executive, at least 3 or 4 of them, come in and actually rearrange. So just walk on and say, no, that first. No, that thing's not going to get done. And it was incredibly useful because they're talking to each other while they're moving these cards. So essentially say the product owner cannot determine the absolute order of everything. So he's going to make a shot at it, or he or she is going to make a shot, and then the senior management go and adjust it, right? And that also gives them visibility. And now we're not doing it at the epic level. This is at the level of story. So it's not at the epic level. But it for us was a very cheap thing to do, right? So before you say that this is what you're going to go to the team as the absolute prioritization order for the product backlog, you make it, and then the senior management comes in and adjusts it. If you can defend why this is number 1, because, no, we need to do that, because if we don't do that, so we don't get to this milestone. And the senior manager, okay, fine. But it's like, I really want to get to this. I need to put this ad code in so I can get this campaign launched by this date. Okay, good enough, right? Sometimes the product owner doesn't know that it's a heavy rule going, right? So that was a cheap technique. Basically, product backlog reprioritization by executives, and it was expensive. It wasted a lot of paper, but because it's not actually the backlog, it's just a copy of them to play with, and then you reflect that in the electronic tracking. So we've used that.
So how would I capture that in a way?
Just allowing executives to, in groups, reprioritize low-level backlog after product owner has finished prioritizing them, to surface any type of like adjustments. So you're not saying product owner, you're not saying executive prioritize this thing from scratch from all the. But it's based on the order.
Adjusting the backlog.
Yeah, adjusting the backlog. And it's amazing that the couple of times to make big adjustment was crucial when we missed it. We didn't know something was happening. And some of the times it was like they want to have something first. It's like, no, you don't really want it. And it was a good discussion with the product owner defending why that should not be number 4. It should be number 8. It was a very interesting discussion. Only 1 hour every week.
So is the product owner response to this is a bit positive?
It's annoying, but they like the fact that after the say, they can say, well, the senior VP said this is okay, right? So it gives them the stamp of approval on the backlog prioritization on a week-to-week basis. It gives them more authority. Now, this is in a world where the product owner does not have the executive authority that in the future model we want them to have, but this is a good way for them to feel like, yeah, I've got the approval on it, and yes, there was adjustment along the way. It's like showing the slide deck to the CEO before you present at a conference, right? It's adjustment made. It's like, well, you can't say that. That's like forward-looking statements and stuff like that. And the executives tend to not move everything because then they will have to understand everything. So they tend to be judicious, but when they actually push something up, they mean it. And that was a really good way to reflect these things until you see the backlog, you actually able to see it.
There's 2 reasons I really like that. One is, first of all, you get that executive feedback, and you might miss something, like you said, that you think is a high priority. Second, you're getting them involved, so you're bringing them into the loop, and they're getting to learn how the system works, and they're participating. The risk that I see with that is you're potentially diminishing prestige and the authority of the product manager. It feels like he has to run everything live.
Right. And the key here is that only in this 1 hour do they have this tactile changes, and after that meeting is over, the product takes 1 hour. 1 hour per week, time bound, and it's the only time where they can be removed. So the executive can't come back to you 2 days later and say, oh, I changed my mind. Wait a minute. Because then you can then commit against that backlog as the absolute order sign off. So it's kind of like the slight window of for your piece kind of thing. And it also make the executive pay more attention to it. Again, this is what we've used as a transitionary, not quite there, but good enough given that we have a reality that product owner not having full authority, but we do want to get them at least for that 1 week the full authority and to give some adjustment. I mean, it's a compromise.
So you're saying that occurs kind of on a weekly basis. So does that, in changes there, does that translate as noise or disruption the further down you get?
The team commits on Wednesday. This meeting happens on Monday. So the backlog gets adjusted before the team reviews it.
Okay, I guess where I was going though with it is...
Well, I mean, that's a logistical issue. You make it so that you're not changing a priority after the commitment. You're making a final adjustment before you commit along prioritization. Which makes it useful because they'll see the results in a week or 2. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Not sure. I guess what I was thinking, down at the lower levels, for the people that are actually doing the work, do those changes at the higher level, if they're happening frequently, like that, are they working in the same cycle?
No, there's 1 cycle ahead, so iteration plus 1. So let's say iteration 7, right? The adjustment would be for iteration 8, which is coming to be committed in 3 days. And the adjustment for the next iteration prioritization happens at the executive level 2 days before the commitment for the next cycle. So you're never changing priority on your current thing. That's just boundary.
Right. You might be changing your release process.
Yes.
And I was just wondering is that change to the lower level folks? Do they ever find that disruptive? Things are changing a lot at the top. Oh, it changed again,
if it's the
and
next iteration,
what we're working on currently is no longer that. So we're going to have to switch gears and refocus.
If you do it every week, by the time you're seeing the same story on the backlog for the 3rd week in a row, you have a sense of trail and theme. A lot of time we write the theme on something, so it's like, okay, this is six story around that thing to complete that exercise. So I think the first week it could be a little bit like, are we prioritizing correctly? But after a while, you get a cumulative effect of that visibility. And also when you have product releases, they can say exactly, it's like, oh, finally that launched. They remember they seeing that one for the last 3 weeks or something that was on the backlog. Incredibly satisfying for them, incredibly hard to get more people involved because those people have to learn the process and there's no formulas yet for how that's done. We made it out.
I just wanted, there's a couple of people in the back that haven't been saying much. I'm just wondering if we're meeting your needs, if you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation.
I'm fine. Just absorbing.
Okay.
Came in late, so.
Sure.
At this point, we're very interested in introducing Scrum to our executives and building a team out of that and managing the strategy from there, the epics, if you will, whatever you call it. We're really not sure how to approach that, so I'm just kind of listening too.
Okay. Do you have any experience doing that?
No.
Either positive or negative?
No, we've really just started that journey of discovery, so we're still in conversations. We've actually engaged Tobias. He's come in to see if we can lend some of his expertise to help us there, but we haven't, I can't say we've made any progress other than just discovery.
Okay, great. I wanted to get back and, I promised I'd share a little bit about this Gazelle's, Rockefeller Habits thing. So the daily meeting structure is 5 to 15 minutes, and its top focus is bottleneck. It's 2 to 5 minutes, what's up, specifics about activities, meetings, accomplishments, noteworthy news from customers, etc. 2 to 5 minutes, daily measurements, indicators, the day before and your goal today. So instead of, what you did yesterday and what you're going to do today, what are, you come up with some measurements and indicators for your business. And then the last 2 to 5 minutes, where are you stuck, where's the bottleneck, similar. So that's for the daily, and they suggest that you stand up. The weekly meeting structure is focus on what's important. So weekly is schedule, and the suggested agenda is 5 minutes good news. Have everyone share 2 good news stories, one personal and one business. It counters the negativity of the meetings, because the second 5 to 10 minutes are the numbers. Go over everyone's individual or team weekly measures of productivity. Next 10 minutes are customer and employee data. 10 to 30 minutes are collective intelligence. Open the conversation around a rock. He calls it a rock, a large priority. Use the collective intelligence of the team to drill into a big issue. Have the person with accountability for a rock make a presentation on how they were addressing it. And then he has one phrase closes, go around the room, let everyone say a word or phrase that represents how they feel at that moment about the meeting. And keep a log, record who said what they would do, what, and when. So that's for accountability. Somebody tracks it. And then he has a pyramid of quarterly meetings, annual, 3 to 5.
There's no monthly, where almost everything in the corporation traditionally is monthly.
Yeah. Well, this is his model, And part of what he does is he comes up. Part of what's missing here, which is part of this, the responsibility of the C team, is coming up with the strategic plans, the measures of productivity, prioritization, but also the way that they pick. What I wanted to ask is how can we correlate, the epic stories with the, they call them big ads, big, hairy, audacious goals. That's one of his models. It comes from Jim Collins. And, so how would we translate, the model that you were talking about, vision, epic, stories, to this kind of this thing? And is it more efficient to translate it? Just curious with that.
I'm just thinking, I'm not sure I have an answer right now.
Well, can you talk a little bit more about how the vision to epic to stories might work? Let's look at that one. In an organization. It doesn't have to be just Tristan. Anyone else can take it.
It's kind of just really simple to me that that's what the C-level there to do, is talk and move vision forward, right? And move the company forward or in different directions. So
well, they have to set vision and direction aren't necessarily the same thing, in my opinion. vision is a picture of the future of where the company wants to go. Direction is where do we need to go, next. Vision can be a longer term, far-reaching. At least that's the way I interpret the model. Direction is, where do we put our resources? Where do we focus? Where do we, what's our